Good morning, guys. How's everybody doing? Hopefully great. Man, cold this morning. Well, it depends. If you're up north, it probably ain't cold to you. But down here in the south, it's cold. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this. And my God, this subject has been beat to death, and so much misinformation has been given all the time. And that is what type of wood to build an enclosure with. Now, people are quick to jump up and say birch, but you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, you're getting pine plywood with like the two outer layers are just going to be a birch veneer. So really, I mean, it's going to have a nicer finish, but you're going to absolutely reap zero benefit. Like, there ain't gonna be no benefit to running that shit. I would say the real 13 ply Russian Baltic birch would probably be one of the best things to build with. But just for the cost of it, I don't really see a benefit to it. Now, one of the dumbest things I had seen posted in Facebook last night on this thread was some dude that said he's been installing for about 30 years. And he didn't know enough to, he didn't know shit. He was going back and quoting a Rockford Falls Gate paper that come with a subwoofer that said, build the enclosure out of particle board. Particle board. I mean, that could have been true if that flyer was in a subwoofer back in like 1987, maybe. It was pretty common for people to use particle board back then because I didn't know any better. I don't understand. This guy was telling, he actually posted, he was doing 163s on music with a single layer baffle of particle board. Dude, I couldn't even reply. I was so dumb. I was just like, holy, this dumb motherfucker actually posted this. Like, I didn't even know what to say, man. I was just, I stepped away from the computer at that point. But what is best to build an enclosure with? It really, it don't matter. The facts are, you get really good sound out of MDF. MDF does work well for the acoustics of it. It's just, I hate MDF because it's so easy to split it, a corner, a break off, but it is strong. I mean, this shit is strong. If you have a leaky trunk in your car, then the MDF, I mean, just from the moisture in the air, that shit can swell up. So there's a lot of downsides to MDF. And then, you know, at that point, your chain store, Lowe's, Home Depot, their plywoods really starts to shine, or their birch, you know, which is not really much better than their old pine plywood. Really, I like maple. I built the wife's blazer out of maple, and that shit, I mean, it's heavy. Not as heavy as MDF, but it's heavy. But it's hard as a damn rock. I mean, I was literally like breaking screws trying to screw the shit together. Really, unless you're using deck mate screws, which I found to be the best by far, and some of them broke, but not near as many as any other brand. But unless you're using deck mate screws, you got the drill pilot hose to like use it. But it does work great. So that old maple plywood, I love that stuff. It's just kind of heavy. But for all the people in this thread that was saying, oh, you can't build a box out of pine plywood, it's no good, blah, blah, blah. Back in 2019, the plywood I built this out of was $21 a sheet for 3/4. And, I mean, this enclosure has proven itself. And the secret is build thick enough. It don't matter what you use. You know, you can go out and get 1/2-inch plywood. And as long as you use 4 layers of it, you're going to do golden, guys. 3/4, at least use at least 2 layers of 3/4, especially if you want to build a good enclosure and you're going to use a lot of power. Double that shit up, dude. Especially the baffle, go through 2-3 layers at least. But bracing, everybody wants to skip on bracing, and bracing is like crucial to everything. That's why you see all the steel bracing in here. Does it help? Hell yeah, it helps. It helps a lot. And really, any wood that I would build this out of, I would have a lot of bracing in. You know, top chamber, bottom chamber. But I didn't flex or flinch using the pine plywood. It was cheap. This was my first wall build ever. I'd built a lot of enclosures, but never a wall, especially a 6th order. So I wasn't going to invest a shit ton of money. And even doing it this way, I had like maybe almost $300 in wood. And that's when the shit was cheap, and it was cheap pine plywood, you know. But that, and back then I couldn't cut a straight line with a circular saw. Now I'm really good at it, but back then I couldn't cut a straight line for shit. So it didn't bother me messing up like a whole sheet of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, when you go 3 layers thick of 3/4, it don't matter what you're using. I mean, I wouldn't do particle board just because particle board is so weak and flimsy. Even at 3/4, it can just like snap apart, you know. But I would if I had like using it as a filler layer, maybe, you know, like a sheet of plywood, particle board, plywood. Then it ain't really gonna make a whole lot of difference. A little bit, but not much, especially once you get the bracing and everything in. So you could probably use it for a filler layer. I wouldn't, but you probably could. But at the end of the day, pick what's right. I mean, MDF would be right for some people. You got a little hatchback car, it never like leaks water into it or anything. You're fine running MDF. People's done it for years, and they've really been some like proven builds with MDF. Pine plywood. I know a lot of people running a pine plywood enclosure that's hella loud. Birch. We all know that the birch is great. Even from like Lowe's, Home Depot, it's going to be just as good as your pine plywood. Sanded pine from like Lowe's, a couple of dollars more. But like this shit here, really rough on the front and grainy. The sanded pine plywood, that's some nice shit to build with. You know, and then you get into like your other rare stuff like the oak and maple. Those definitely going to be great. Baltic birch going to be great. Would I build with particle board or OSB? Absolutely not. I mean, that stuff's just garbage. But any kind of plywood or MDF, you're going to be golden. And then there's, you know, the guys out there that build a complete steel enclosure. Most of us ain't going to do that, especially me, 'cause I like to daily drive a base vehicle. So there's no way I would ever do that. I've actually thought about steel caging this, and it's just, the only benefit I would get from steel caging is none. In reality, you could probably gain a little more room using a steel cage. But at the end of the day, I'm really picky, and you know, even if I did like 2-inch wide by 1 inch, I would still do 2 layers of wood on it, and then I'm thicker than I am now. I honestly believe if you use good steel bracing and build 3 layers thick, a steel cage ain't going to be a benefit to you pretty much at all. I mean, I know a lot of guys swear by them, but I have no flex at all of the enclosure in here. So any gain that I would get from doing a steel cage would be minimal at best, you know. I just don't see doing all the work and spending all the time doing it and the money to build a steel cage in here to gain 1 or 2 tenths, if that. Especially with this being a demo vehicle, there's no reason to do it. So, you know, a lot of guys disagree with me on that, but if you build an enclosure properly, thick enough, do a lot of bracing to where nothing can flex, you're doing what a steel cage already does. A steel cage keeps you from like flexing the enclosure. It's the same thing when you like cut the roof off and pour that 16-pound foam down the sides of an enclosure. All you're doing is keeping it from flexing. If you build it thick enough, it ain't going to flex anyway. So I don't really see a point, especially in something you're going to drive daily. But anyway, guys, that's all for today. I hope you learned something. I hope I helped. And by God, stay out of the Facebook group. Some guys are idiots in there. But all right. Anyway, peace out, guys. Bass on.